Congressman, good to see you again here.
Good to see you, Jason.
Absolutely. You said you might consider running for U.S. Senate again.
Yeah.
Early polls show things look really favorable for you. When are you going to make a decision, and what's riding on that decision?
Yeah. Well, I'll make a decision soon, and I'm seriously considering it, and I want to tell you why. I spent the last 6 months or so with my family, with my kids, reconnecting with my kids in a lot of ways, and watching what's happening. And I think in the last election, a lot of folks voted for somebody who hoped would lower their costs, would look out for working people. And I think what we've seen is that's not been the focus at all. In fact, we've seen costs going up. And I'm looking around saying, who's going to fight for Texas? And who can also remind us of what we do share instead of just pitting us against each other? And so that's why I'm considering it, because I think we need somebody who would be a fighter for us, but who also knows that there are some things that we can share, that we can work together on. That's always been my belief.
If you decide to get into this race, you would face either John Cornyn, the incumbent, or Ken Paxton, the Attorney General. Who would you want to run against?
I don't really think it matters. I think that Ken Paxton has shown himself to be historically corrupt. I think John Cornyn has completely lost touch. And I think both of them are really only trying to pursue the support and interests of basically one person, when what they really should be doing is talking about 30 million Texans and what's going on with Texans who can't afford their groceries, what's going on with working Texans who want somebody who will fight for them so they can get ahead. I don't see any of that. And so to me, it won't really matter, and that won't be the basis of my decision.
What is the basis of the decision, though? What is it, at the end of the day, because you have young kids at home, like I do, what's it going to come down to?
Well, it is about them. It's about my kids, it's about all the kids in Texas, and about our future. I see what's happening in the country. I see the division that is literally threatening to tear us apart. I also think that we do have to fight on some things. We have to fight for the fundamental beliefs that we have as Americans. We have to fight for the Constitution. We have to fight for some of the commitments that we made in our founding documents. But we also have to have leaders who can bring us back together. I think there's when I talk to folks here, and I've been so happy to be home so much more, not being in Congress anymore. But when I talk to folks, they're looking for somebody who can bring us together, but also talk to what their issues actually are. Not all this stuff that's just so distracting, the stuff that people use to get attention, but doesn't really impact people's lives. I think there's a hunger for that, and that's what I want to speak to.
Well, let's talk about that, because Democrats have not won running against Donald Trump. Voters have consistently said they want a message from Democrats or somebody else. What would that message be from you, though?
Yeah, well, listen, if I was running, I wouldn't be against Donald Trump. I'd be running to represent 30 million Texans. And I'm proud that in the last election, when I was on the ticket with Donald Trump, or on the ballot with Donald Trump, that I had the most split ticket voters in the country were here in Texas.
More voted for you than Kamala Harris here in Texas.
Than any other state in the country, in any Senate race in the country. And so I'm proud that we had that split ticket. I have people all the time who come up to me and tell me, you're the only Democrat that I voted for, or you're the only Democrat that my wife voted for, which I also hear a lot. And so it wouldn't be about just opposing something, but also what are you for? Do you understand what's been holding us back, what's been making our government not work, what's been not allowing us to deliver? I think there are some fundamental reforms that we have to make. I think folks were right to demand change. But LBJ used to say that any jackass can knock down a barn, but it takes a carpenter to build one. Building things and putting together the systems and putting in place the policies that will help people is hard. But change was necessary and still is, and that's what I want to fight for.
How would this campaign be different from last year's?
So much different for me.
Really?
Just personally, of course, in the last campaign, I was still a sitting member of Congress. And we had a closely divided House in which every vote counted. And I thought that part of my responsibility to the people of North Texas who elected me was that I had to be there. And that was also something that House leadership wanted. But it certainly didn't allow me to do as much as I wanted to do on the campaign side. And so I'm really excited about the prospect that if I was able to run again, that I could spend so much more time here and feel a lot more like I did in 2018 when I first ran for Congress. Really talking to people about what's going on in their lives, about what they're looking for in leaders, and trying to be responsive to that. It's those stories that I've heard over the years that have always inspired me. There are so many incredible people in our state. I think we need to have leadership that understands that and wants to lift it up, instead of spending all of our time pitting us against each other. That's how we've gotten to where we are, to where this is an incredibly divisive moment. I think we can do better.
So you'd be more visible here since you're not voting in Congress. you'd have a different message. What else would voters see different this time from Colin Allred, though?
Well, you know, I feel more relaxed.
Do you really?
I do. And
the pressure of D.C. off of you, or what?
Yeah, and I think part of it is spending time with my kids, spending time with my friends, talking to normal folks, getting back to the feeling that of why I went into public service in the first place, which was not to just deliver scripted lines and to, you know, do whatever was most politically expedient. And that's not how I ran last time, but it's certainly, I always think that that's a pressure that you have.
Yeah.
But to just really speak to like real issues and talk about, listen, we have an affordability crisis in this state. Folks can't buy a house. They can't put food on the table. We need leaders who will speak to that. That's my experience growing up. And so I think we cracked that door with a lot of folks who got to know me some, particularly in the final months of the campaign, and we're picking up a lot of momentum. I think we want to keep that going, and I feel a lot more relaxed. I think folks would see that.
You had a competitive primary last year. Would it sway you at all if any other Democrats like Beto O'Rourke got into this race? Would you decide not to if he did, or have you spoken to him?
Well, you know, listen, I've always looked at running for office as to whether or not I have something to bring and whether or not I'm the best person you know, to run in that race. And I've never determined it, you know, based on who else was going to be running in a primary. And as you know, Jason, when I ran in 2018, I had a primary in my congressional race.
You had a bunch of people for all your primaries.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've always had primaries, but in every primary, I've always run like the same way I want to run in the general election, which is speaking to the issues that I know will broadly impact Texans. That's the same way I would run now. And so, you know, I never fear any of that. I don't make my decisions based on that. And I know that might sound, you know, maybe, how would you say that? I actually just don't make my decisions based on what other folks are going to do. I think if I feel like I'm the right person for it and that I know I can do better and do a good job and then also do a good job in the office, then I'll do it.
It's been 6 months since your last campaign ended. You mentioned talking to friends, family. What have they said about this? Have you floated this out to them, and have they had any thoughts for you?
Yeah, you know, listen, I've been really gratified at how many people have told me and come up to me and talked to me about, you know, thank you for speaking out on this. Thank me for what I fought for in the last campaign, and asked me to consider running again. And you know, I think for us as a family, you know, my wife and I are a team. As you know, Jason, I didn't know my father growing up, and being a dad is a big deal for me. And we've always made these decisions together based on, you know, can we do this consistent with our family, but also can we do this for the future of our kids? Right. And I think we have 30 million Texans who are also thinking that, and who are also hoping that somebody's thinking about them instead of just themselves or trying to please some political person, right? And that to me, I think, is what's at stake right now in this moment, is that so many of our fundamental values are at risk, but who's going to look out for Texas? It's okay, you know, to break from your party. It's okay to have some independent thoughts. It's okay to think I'm a Texan first before you think of, you know, anything else. That's my approach has always been, and you know, I think that's the conversations I've been having. Is, you know, who's going to look out for us?
Have you traveled around the state yet at all? Any quiet visits anywhere yet?
I've had a chance to go around, you know, a bit, and I look forward to doing, you know, even more of that. And you know, listen, on the last campaign, as I said, you know, being in Congress was somewhat limiting.
Sure.
But there were so many people that I met around the state who inspired me. You know, grandmothers who were taking care of, you know, an entire community that everybody was looking to. You know, small business owners who were pillars of their community. You know, women who stepped forward and told their stories about what they're experiencing here in Texas. And people talking about, you know, that they wanted to, you know, buy a house but couldn't. They were worried about being able to put food on the table. Those stories still inspire me.
And when should Texans expect a decision from you on this? The
Well,
summer?
the summers. You know, and I think soon. And you know, I want to make sure that, you know, I'm seriously considering this. I wanted to make sure that folks knew that my decision is coming soon, and that should I run, you know, it'll be a very different campaign, and I plan to, you know, show, you know, more of myself, be more of myself, and hopefully we can give Texans a representative who will care more about them than somebody just cares about himself.
But we feel like we know you. I mean, we know your background growing up. We know about your children, you and your wife. I mean, we saw the ads last campaign.
Yeah.
What else can you tell us about yourself that voters don't already know?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and I think that, you know, for us as a state, you know, we need to have a leader who will look out for us in the context of what's best for us instead of just, you know, what is my party demanding. And I have some you know, things that I do think have to be done to make government work better. some reforms that have to be done. I think we should ban gerrymandering. I know there's been some discussion around even further redrawing and gerrymandering the districts here in Texas. To me, that's made the House of Representatives a disaster. I think we need to look at the Senate rules that are preventing us from passing legislation. This Congress has done almost nothing legislatively, and that's because of some of the structural things that have to be fixed. I think people are right to be upset about what's not been happening, but then we also have to provide, I think, answers to why that's happening and what we would do differently. I think I didn't do enough of that in the last campaign. Policies are very important, of course, but there's some fundamental things that have to be fixed for any of those policies that ever be put in place.
Before I let you go, President Trump reportedly urging Governor Abbott to call a special session to redraw congressional lines. It would seem to me, and I think there's concern among the Republicans in Congress from Texas, that not only would Democrats potentially be in trouble, but some Republican incumbents would also be in trouble. What do you think would happen if they crack that back open again?
Yeah, and I have some Republican friends who I know don't want to do that. And I'd say be careful what you wish for. As you know, Jason, in 2018 I ran against Pete Sessions, who had been unopposed in the previous election. He'd been there for 22 years.
Chairman of the Rules Committee. He was in leadership.
Yeah, he was very senior. And nobody thought he could be beaten. And we beat him pretty handily, in part because they got too greedy. And so to me, one of the reasons why we should ban gerrymandering from both parties, because Democrats do this too in the states that they control, is that it leads to these negative outcomes of folks who are more interested in what satisfying primary voters and representing them than the folks, the entire group that they're supposed to be representing. And so I hope they don't do it. I think it would be a mistake on so many different levels. But I also would say be careful what you wish for, because you never know how elections are going to go.
Congressman, thanks for the time.
Well, thanks, Jason. I appreciate it.